This past weekend, I went backpacking, and I went backpacking with Darwin. And this wasn't just a normal backpacking trip. This was, I guess you could say, my first winter backpacking trip. About a week ago, we got maybe 4 feet of snow over the course of 4 days. And although a lot of it has kind of dried and frozen at this point, you know, this was still very much so camping in the snow, hiking in the snow. Temperatures were into the single digits at night where we were camping. We were probably up at maybe around 9,000 feet or something, and it was very cold. So to start off, why did I do this trip in the first place? I wanted to do this and camp in such, you know, extreme conditions compared to just a normal summer's day to better prepare myself for future trips. I wanted to use a backpacking kit that was going to be extremely similar to one that I carry on every other backpacking trip I've ever taken, you know, except add maybe a couple extra things and see how I do. See what gear I liked, see what gear I didn't like, see what worked, and see what didn't work. I also had this pad strapped on top. So let's take a look at this gear here. I got a pair of fleece gloves. I have a buff to cover up my face at night. I have this folding pad. I have these wind pants, and I was actually wearing a pair of tights at the time too, so I could double up on warmth at night if I needed, or if it was breezy, then I would both have the tights and the wind pants. I have my ground sheet for my shelter, just a plastic grocery bag for food since I didn't think we were going to be really dealing with animals. On this trip, I brought my tarp. You know, and again, that's kind of the point. I wanted to use a lot of the same gear I would for every other trip I do, just to see how it works out when conditions aren't ideal. Now, here's where things start to change a little bit more from normal. On this trip, I also brought a bivvy, again, to add warmth to my sleep system, and if it was windy, it would really cut down on that wind. I actually brought a stove to be able to melt snow and have a hot meal in the evening. I brought my Enlightened equipment rain jacket, which, you know, again, an essential layer every time you're out. Always gotta have a rain jacket. And I brought a very puffy, very warm Noon Attack jacket. This was going to be my main layer at night to add extra warmth to my sleep system, and also when I'm stopped and taking breaks. I used the same quilt that I have been, same quilt that I used on the Florida Trail. This is just a 30-degree Enlightened equipment Enigma. It's very light, it's very small. But I did bring just a liner with me, you know, sleeping bag liner. This is not very thick, not very warm, but it does add maybe an extra 5 degrees or something. I brought a pillow. I felt the pillow would add extra warmth to my head. You know, I brought 3 pairs of socks, and that's kind of the only other thing that I can think of. 1 pair to wear during the day to get wet, 1 pair to keep dry at night, and then a 3rd pair to wear the next day while my first pair is drying. And I almost forgot one thing, but I also brought this foam pad. Again, the same foam pad I bring on every single trip. So I had 2 pads. Both of these are torso length, and that is truly everything. Just got a pack liner in here, some water bottles, some tent stakes, and you know, nothing really crazy. For this trip, we also had some snowshoes, and the snowshoes were fantastic. I really enjoyed using them, but it's probably not something that I would carry on a thru hike, but depending on the conditions, you know, you may just have to. The Continental Divide Trail in Colorado going northbound, you may just have to. So again, nothing crazy about my gear, just adding on a couple extra layers, a couple extra things of insulation, and like a stove. And that's kind of the point. You know, I want to bring basically the same stuff as I normally do and see what's gonna work. You know, see if any of this stuff I could leave at home next time. See if any of this stuff is stuff that I didn't use or didn't need. So let's talk about what I feel like I did right. You know, what worked out? Well, I was actually too warm. At least my upper body was too warm. I had too many layers and I wound up not even using some of them. Now, also in these types of conditions, I really enjoyed having a stove. I'm really glad I brought a stove. You know, both for the warm meal at night and then the warm drink, coffee in the morning, with the added bonus of if I were to run out of water or can't find water, I could melt snow. I was very happy with my tarp and how that worked out. You know, I was able to pack down the snow where I was sleeping, and when it came to staking out my lines, I wasn't really going to be able to put my tent stakes into the ground because the ground was frozen. So what I was doing with my tent stakes, instead of placing it in the ground like so, you know, I was putting it into the snow like this, with just my guy line wrapped right in the center, and I would pack that down, and the snow actually just froze right around it. If it were to be snowing, I think a tent would obviously work a lot better. But, you know, on a thru hike, it's probably not going to be snowing constantly or snowing a lot. I think I would more so be dealing with just snow that is already on the ground and has not melted. Now, my backpack, typically a very small backpack, you know, 28 liters, if that. I was very happy with it, and actually I felt like I had room to spare. So for the most part, I think I achieved my goal in that I could go on a thru hike and deal with these types of conditions by just adding a couple extra things to my kit, stay very light on my feet, have a very light and minimal backpacking setup, and be very happy out there like that. I don't have to change everything out just to go hike in these types of conditions. So that's what worked. But let's talk about what didn't work, because there's one very, very big thing that went wrong on this trip for me. My biggest lesson from this trip was my feet. During the day, they were totally fine, totally warm, didn't really seem like a problem, but at night they froze. Even though I was able to dry them out totally okay, they just absolutely froze. So although my upper body was toasty and warm, my legs were totally fine, my feet were not okay. So let's talk about what I would change for next time more specifically. Well, first of all, obviously, instead of having this foldable pad, you know, it's big, it's bulky, and even then, it's only torso length, so a full-length pad would be so much more bulky. I would bring an inflatable mattress, a full-length inflatable mattress, that way my head to my toes are warm at night. So also for this trip, since I felt like I had too many upper body layers, I would ditch this big, heavy, puffy jacket and probably carry a lighter one. You know, I guess I forgot to mention, but during that trip, I was also wearing a fleece jacket. The fleece jacket is great because I can hike all day in it. It's gonna keep me warm during the day. It's gonna be an extra layer at night, but I think I could get away with a lighter version of this. And that's actually what I'm wearing right now. This is an Enlightened Equipment Torrid. It is definitely lighter than this one, and so far, I feel like it's comparably warm. Now, these are actually the socks I wore on that trip. We'll get rid of those. But that's the other thing. Throughout the day, my feet were getting wet, and although I was moving and that was keeping them warm and they never really felt cold, you know, I would absolutely next time carry waterproof socks. That way, my feet are gonna stay a little bit more dry and they're gonna stay a little bit more warm throughout the day, so that when I get into camp at the night, I'm gonna be in a lot better of a position. Now, the other thing I would ditch is my sleeping bag liner. Although I was only carrying a 30-degree quilt, I felt like wearing extra layers throughout the night. You know, even as cold as it was, I didn't really feel like this was necessary, and I could easily get rid of this. Another reason for wanting to get rid of this is I was just getting tangled up in it. Now, similar to the waterproof socks, again, because my feet were the weakest link of this entire trip, I would also carry some synthetic booties, you know, just to keep my feet warm, just to be an extra little thing to add on. I also prefer the synthetic booties over the down booties because I feel like synthetic booties can get just a little bit wet and they're still gonna keep you warm. So that's what I would change for next time to make it better. I feel like I could remove things and I could add a couple things, and I would probably stay at roughly the same like base weight. I would be a whole lot warmer. So what can we learn from this video? What can we learn from my first experience out winter camping? Well, as you may have noticed, I didn't really mention what my base weight was. I didn't mention what any of this stuff weighs, and you know, that's kind of the point. It doesn't really matter what it weighs. It matters what's gonna keep me comfortable and what's gonna keep me warm out there. What's gonna keep me happy. I'm not trying to build the ultimate winter kit ever. I'm trying to expose myself to harsher conditions and see how I can react. So in a more broader sense, what I can recommend anyone to do is get out, do overnight trips, go out hiking in the rain. Go out hiking when it's super, super windy and setting up your shelter is going to be very difficult, you know, but go out close to home. Stay within a controlled environment, on a trail you know, an area you know, and a place where if something really does go wrong, you can get picked up and you can get help easily. That is what this trip was for me, and this is a type of trip, different conditions, but the style of trip that I do a lot of, and I have done a lot of. Camping in conditions that are less than ideal to see how you deal with it. You know, so by taking little trips like this, you can pick up new skills and new knowledge that, sure, you can read about online, but it's just not the same. You really want to see how your gear reacts and how you react. Start small and build up. Start close to home and then break away from that. Go a little bit further. As you get more comfortable and as you gain these skills, you're going to be a much more well-rounded backpacker. So that's everything I have for you. I hope everyone else is also getting out on these small trips and learning new little skills just like I am. You know, and I hope everyone else is planning for the spring and a new hiking year. I know I have some hikes on my mind, and I hope you do as well. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.